welcome that we have received while we're here. I do work at Zollican. I teach at Zollican. I am the chief academic officer. This means I oversee the academic programs there. And we came here because we've known Dean and Tanya Taylor for several years, and it was through their friendship that we ended up coming here, and we're very grateful to be here. But today, I want to preach to you from Daniel chapter 1. It's a good follow-up on what Weston preached last week. Last week he talked about King Josiah and the reforms that he brought to Judah because of the things that they had abandoned the Lord in many ways, and they were not worshiping properly in many ways, and he brought those reforms. This is going to pick up exactly where that ended last week. We did not plan that. I think the Lord planned that to happen. So that's where we're going to be at today in Daniel chapter 1. Before we begin, thank you. Why Daniel? I picked Daniel because our God chose to reveal himself to us in different ways. He could have just given us a systematic theology and said, here's some propositions about me and about you and about sin, and this is what you need to know. But he didn't do that. He gave us a book full of stories and poems and songs and letters, and because it's important that we not just know propositions about God, but we see truth as it intersects with our lives every day. And so we get to see the truth in people's lives and what happens in their lives and how it applies to their lives. And that's why I enjoy preaching from biblical narrative, biblical stories. The biblical writers are really good storytellers. They know how to tell a story and reveal things to us through it. And so I like to point out how they do that. And there's some exciting things in it. Unfortunately, Daniel has become almost like a kid's story. It's something the children know, and it should be. I mean, they should know it. It is valuable for them. They can understand it. But it's also incredibly deep at the same time. There's something in there for us as adults also. And so I want to look at that. One of the biggest problems, I think, when it comes to reading Daniel, why we don't get as much out of it sometimes as we should, is that we already know it too well. Anytime you know a story really well, you know what's going to happen. You can't be surprised by anything anymore. It's like, yeah, I know what's going to happen. Okay, but you should be surprised by some of the things that you see in Daniel. You should say, wait a minute, what just happened? And we're going to look at one of those today as we go through this. But before we begin, I want to talk about Josiah. So what happens is, for the 6th and 7th century BC in the ancient Near East, Assyria was the major power in the world. And they dominated everything, and they dominated Israel. And they are now starting to decline. And a new kingdom called Babylon is now starting to rise. And they have a king called Nabopolassar. And Nabopolassar starts attacking the Assyrian Empire. And in 612, they overthrow the Assyrian capital of Nineveh and destroy it completely, just as Nahum predicted they were going to do. And that is what happened. So the rest of the Assyrians kind of regroup and go on, and they go to a place called Carchemish to kind of make a last stand at Carchemish. And so that's when the general of the Babylonian army, Nebuchadnezzar, who's like the crown prince of Babylon, goes to Carchemish to try to defeat them there. Now, the Egyptians don't want the Babylonians being the new guys on the block. They like a weakened Assyrian empire, so they want to help the Assyrians out. So they rush up to Carchemish to try to help them. This is where, for reasons the Bible does not explain, Josiah decided to try to stop them. So he takes his army out to try to cut off the Egyptian army to keep them from getting to Carchemish. And there's an interesting part there in the story in 2 Chronicles where the Pharaoh Necho, says to Josiah, I don't have a fight with you. I'm going to fight somebody else. You should just go home. Your God wants me to do this, and he wants you to go home. And that narrative, the narrator actually tells us that was true, that was God's message for Josiah, that he needed to go home and not stop them. But he fought them anyway, and he needlessly, pointlessly died in the battle, and that brought all his reforms to an end, and it really plunged Judah into a death spiral from that point forward. They didn't have that much longer left to go as an independent kingdom after that. So after that, Nebuchadnezzar finds out that his father has died, and so now Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon. So he goes on kind of a victory tour throughout the Middle East, and he just starts picking on different kingdoms, and he goes there to take people and stuff from them to go back for his kind of investiture as king, and he's going to show how powerful he is. One of the places he stops is Jerusalem, and he surrounds Jerusalem, and the Bible tells us that Jehoiakim was like, hey, we give up. We're not even going to fight you. What do you want? We'll give it to you. We give up. So he took things from there and other places, and he heads back to Babylon with all that. And that's where Daniel 1 starts. Daniel 1 starts in verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. I'm sorry, I have it up there for you. And besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the sanctuary of his God. So this is the kind of background of what's going on in Daniel. So 3rd year of Jehoiakim, which we know is 605 BC, is when this happens. And Nebuchadnezzar, whose name means Nabu, preserve my firstborn son, because his father, Nabopolassar, worshipped a god called Nabu, and so he's named Nebuchadnezzar. And he came to Jerusalem, besieged it. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. Now, this is not the exile. That's going to happen like 18 years later. This is just a little skirmish where he takes some things back. He's going to come back in 597 BC and do some more, and then he comes back in 587 and completely destroys Jerusalem and the temple and takes everybody into exile. That does not happen at this point. So he takes some of the vessels, some of the implements, the articles from the house of God, we don't know which ones. He takes them with him, and he brought them to the land of Shinar. We don't hear that term a whole lot. Shinar, where Shinar is Babylon. It's the archaic name for Babylon. Back in the Genesis 11, when we learn about the Tower of Babel, it's in the plain of Shinar. And so anytime, like in the prophets, they want to talk about a place as being like really an evil and dark place, they call it Shinar, because that's kind of this original place of great evil. And so he took it back to, he didn't say Babylon, he says Shinar, that evil place, to the house of his God. His god was Marduk, sometimes called Bel. That's who he worshipped. And he put them in the house of Marduk. Now, that's another thing that kings did back then. There's other places in the Bible where we see that. If you're victorious over someone, you take their stuff, their god's stuff, and you put it in your God's temple. It's a way of saying, our God beat your God, and we now own his stuff. And so he brings it back to do that. And we're going to see those vessels later in the book. You will see them later in the book because he gets to them later. They come up again. So he does this to make a point. I won, now your stuff is my stuff. So Nebuchadnezzar has a plan. He has a plan, what he's going to do. He executes the plan. He gets what he wants. So it says he besieged, he brought, he placed. He came. He is the man doing this. I am Nebuchadnezzar. I am the king. I can do whatever I want. I am the sovereign, and I rule on earth. But Daniel undermines that narrative because right in the middle of all that, it says, the Lord gave Jehoiakim into his hand. He didn't do it. He only was allowed to do it because God gave this to him. He wanted him to do this. So Nebuchadnezzar thinks it's all me. And this is going to be the running battle throughout the book. It keeps coming up. Nebuchadnezzar thinks it's me. I'm in charge. I don't bow to anybody. I am the king. And Daniel has to keep saying, no, you're not. There is somebody else who is the sovereign. And Nebuchadnezzar needs to be humbled. And that's what's going to happen throughout the first several chapters of the book, is Nebuchadnezzar is going to have to face up to the fact that he's not all-powerful. That what he's able to do, he's only able to do because the Lord is allowing him to do it. So he's done that. Then he has another plan. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace. And to teach them the literature of the Chaldeans, the king assigned them a daily provision of the food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated 3 years, and at the end of that time, they were to stand before the king. So he has this plan. We're going to take hostages, we're going to bring them back, we're going to educate them, we're going to make them into Babylonians. And so this is something that happened at that time. You take hostages, and the reason for that, again, he wanted to bring important people to this ceremony, but also the reason they would take hostages is we're going to leave the nobles in charge. They're there, they're going to run the country under our supervision, but we take their children with us. We have your children, so you're now less likely to rebel against us because your children live with us. And now we get to train your children to be good Babylonians, to love Babylon, to be loyal to us, so that one day they can go back and rule your country and be loyal Babylonians. So they're going to try to brainwash these children into being good Babylonians. That's the plan. And so we're told, again, they're from the royal family, from nobility. These are not just anybody they found. They took the ruling class's children with them. Youths, it says, youths. Now, that's a really broad term. How young is a youth? It could be any number of things. So people always ask, so how old was Daniel exactly? Well, if you're 10 years old, I don't mean to insult you, but probably at 10 years old, you're not filled with all wisdom and knowledge yet. You might be one day. So he's probably not 10 years old at this point. But he can't be too old, because we're going to find out that Daniel's going to be there for 67 years at least doing this. So he can't be very old either. So most people think somewhere between 15 and 20 maybe is how old he is at this time. So they have to be young, and they have to be without blemish. They have to be of good appearance. He wants good-looking young people, and they're supposed to make him look good. People are supposed to come and see the beautiful people that surround the king. So that's who he chooses to come and be these hostages who will learn, hopefully he hopes, to serve him. And they've already got to have a lot of intellectual ability. They can't be dumb. He wants ones that have the ability to learn everything that he is going to teach them. And as the children of the upper crust of Judean society, they are probably already pretty well educated. They've been going through education, so that's why he takes them, so they'll be ready to learn. Because he says he wants them to be competent to stand in the king's palace, to be courtiers, to quite literally stand in the king's palace, to be ready to go do something, to serve him, to do things. That's what they did. So that he wants to train them to do that, to be loyal servants of his. And the way he's going to do that, he institutes two things, this plan. He's going to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. Now, the Chaldeans is actually an ethnic term meaning Babylonian, but it's also like a class of people in Babylon, the wise men. They were the Chaldeans, and he's going to learn their ways. He's going to learn from them, and he's going to learn their language as well, Aramaic. He's going to be able to speak that and communicate in it. In other words, he's trying to Babylonize them. We want to make you into Babylonians. We want you to think like us, talk like us, be like us. And the idea, you bring them young, then you can brainwash them. So that is what he is trying to do at this point. The second thing he does is assign them a daily provision of the food the king ate and the wine that he drank. Okay, what is that all about? He's giving them good food. Why? Well, probably a lot of it is a bribe. Like, hey, look, we take care of you here. You get the good stuff from the king's table. So, don't you like Babylon? Aren't we good to you? Look at how well we treat you. Part of it is probably a bribe. And probably also, I know this is hard for us to get, but they really did believe, in a sense, that you are what you eat. When the conquistadors came to the Americas and conquered South America, they found a lot of new foods, tomatoes, potatoes, corn, things they haven't had before. And they didn't eat it at first because they were afraid that it would turn them into Indians. Like, you eat their food, you become more like them. So it took them a while to get used to the idea of eating their food because they didn't understand genetics back then. They didn't know why people looked the way they did. So that might be part of what's going on here. We get you to eat our food, you become like us. And this is going to happen for 3 years. This is the 3-year Babylonian college course that they have to take. And at the end of that time, again, the goal is they will stand before the king. That's underlined up there because that's the important thing. That is his goal. That's what he wants to have happen. So the education, the diet, all of this is meant to make that happen. Then we're told who some of these hostages are. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. So among these, so there were more than these 4. We're just going to learn about the 4 of these guys who were taken. And he gave them names, and that is a special word, I'm going to come back to it later, is literally the word like to fix. He fixed names on them. He fixed this name on Daniel, and he fixed this name on Hananiah. That's important. We'll come back to that. But he's giving them new names. Once again, the idea is to brainwash them. Because Daniel means God is my judge. Belteshazzar means prince of Baal. Hananiah means Yah has favored, or Yahweh has favored. Shadrach means commanded by Aku, another Babylonian god. Mishael means who is what God is. It's a variant of Michael. That's what my name is and what it means. Meshach means who is what Aku is. Another reference to this Babylonian god. And Azariah he called Abednego. Azariah means Yah has helped. Abednego means servant of Nego. It's another name for Nebo. So they're giving them these names of these other gods to try to brainwash them. Because when I say their names mean that, it's important to understand, like my name is Michael. Michael means who is like God. But nobody comes up to me and says, hi, who is like God? They just call me Michael, and they may or may not know that that means who is like God. When I say that Belteshazzar means Prince of Bel, I mean that was his name. If people greeted him, they would say, hey, Prince of Bel, come here. And he would have to say, hi, I'm Prince of Bel. That was the name that they were given, the name that they were called by. So you can imagine this would wear on you over time. You have to always, everybody's calling you, hey, Prince of Bel, or servant of Nego, or that's what you hear all the time. That's who you are. That's what you're going to become, they hope. So part of the acculturation, part of the brainwashing is give them new names. So now every day, that's what they hear. They are now Babylonians, and Babylonian gods should be their gods. So that happens, and then we're told, but Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Daniel resolved. That's the same word that was fix, when he fixed names on them. So they fix a name on him, and he fixes his heart on doing this. In other words, what he's doing is a reaction to what they did. He knows what they're doing. He understands you're trying to brainwash me. You're trying to Babylonize me. How do I take a stand against that? So he says, you're fixing a name on me, so I'm going to fix my heart on doing this. What I'm going to do is not defile himself, it says. So what does that mean? Often this is read as like he'll eat food that makes him ritually unclean, things they're not supposed to eat under the law. The problem with that is that like wine is never unclean. Vegetables are never unclean. The only thing that's unclean in the Old Testament is meat, some kind of flesh. So the wine, there's no reason not to drink that. That wouldn't ritually defile him under the law. So probably that's not. And the fact, he lives in Babylon. He is already ritually defiled just by being there. So it's not going to affect him that way. It could be that some people think, well, maybe it was dedicated to idols. So he doesn't want to eat food that was dedicated to idols. Possible, it doesn't say that, and probably everything they eat is going to be dedicated to idols anyway. There might not be any way to avoid doing that. But probably what's going on here, it's eating the king's food is an indication of being politically loyal to him. I am loyal to you. That's a big deal in the Old Testament. If you eat at someone's table, you should be loyal to them. We see that in David, when David was supposed to eat at Saul's table, and when David was supposed to eat at Saul's table. When David wasn't there one day, Saul got upset. Where's David? Why isn't he eating at my table? And then the next day, why isn't he here? Why isn't he eating at my table? That was concerning. And so later in this book, in chapter 11, there's going to be this statement about the king of the south, and people are going to rise up against him. And it says, even people who ate his own food rose up against him. Like, that's shocking. You're supposed to be loyal to the people whose food you eat, and they rose up against him anyway. So probably it's like you're saying, by eating it, you're saying, I will be loyal to you. And also, he might feel that he's turning away from the Lord. I'm letting them acculturate me. I'm letting them brainwash me. So I need to take a stand. And he knows that the other exiles and the people back in Judah are not eating well at all. So it's like, I'm going to show my solidarity with them in some way. So I want to eat what they're eating. And so he decides he doesn't want to do that. So that's his decision. I'm going to stand up to this because I don't want to eat this. So he has a plan. His first plan, therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. Now, we don't know exactly what he said, but he says that I don't want to defile myself. And okay, great. Now, he has a problem. He goes to someone for a solution. But before we are told what happens, the narrator kind of interrupts with this parenthetical statement, sometimes called a narrative aside. Anytime there's a narrative aside, anytime the narrator interrupts the story to say, I need to tell you something really important before I tell you what happens in the rest of the story, it's important. You should pay attention to what the narrator is telling you because he thinks you need to know this to understand what's about to happen. So we're told then, God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of eunuchs. So here we go. God gave this man compassion. This word for compassion is a word that appears a lot in the Old Testament. It means like covenant loyalty. King James likes to translate it loving kindness. The guy loved Daniel. He was loyal. He's a friend to Daniel. That's great. Excellent. Daniel doesn't want to do this. He goes to this guy, and we're told that God has given this guy, Daniel, favor with this guy. This is awesome. The way has been made for Daniel not to have to do this. So what do we expect? We expect the guy's going to say, absolutely, my friend. I will help you because you are my friend, and I have favor towards you. It builds up those expectations in us. But then he doesn't do it. The chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink, for why should he see that you were in worse condition than the youths who are your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. First words out of his mouth are, I'm afraid. Okay, I'm your friend, but I'm afraid. One of the like bedrock foundational parts of storytelling, good storytelling, is show, don't tell. I mean, I can tell you, oh, Mary's really smart. She's very, very smart. And you think, okay, Mary is smart, great. But if I show you Mary doing smart things, then you're like, oh, wow, that Mary sure is smart. It means more to you. You have figured out that she's really smart. Often in narrative, especially here, the Lord has not told us anything about Nebuchadnezzar, other than he came and took Jerusalem. But what he's like, we don't know. But here we're getting to see something about him. That is that he is so terrifying that people who should be your loyal friends will turn on you because they are afraid of him. They're afraid of what he will do to them. And as we learn throughout the book, this man is filled with irrational rage and anger and demands, and he wants to be obeyed all the time about everything. So he says, I am afraid of him. His fear overcomes his loyalty. And when he says he'll see you are not in worse condition, the you there actually says your face. So it's a play on words here. He says, you're going to see your face and I'm going to lose my head. I don't want that to happen. So I can't help you with this. I'm not going to endanger myself. So his first his first attempt at doing this fails. The person you would think is going to help him doesn't help him. So this certainly heightens the tension now. Okay, if the friend won't help him, what's he going to do? This is not going to be easy. Living in Babylon's not going to be easy. It's not like everything's going to be smoothed out for him and it'll be okay. Now we find out it's going to be a hard road, and it shows us something about Nebuchadnezzar at this point. And Daniel has now learned something. He's learned a lot of things about them. So now we get to see Daniel's wisdom. We're going to see what he does that makes him a wise person, because then he has a second plan. Then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servants for 10 days. Let them be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. Daniel is now being very wise about what he's doing. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, I don't want to defile myself. Because he has found out now that they don't care. You don't want to defile yourself? So what? I don't care. That means nothing to me. That is not a value to them. So he doesn't even try that, because he knows they're not going to pay any attention to that. He doesn't mention it. This time, he comes up with a specific proposal. It's not just, hey, I don't want to do this. It's, would you help me do this? I've got a plan. Here's what it's going to be. I'm going to lay it out for you. So he comes up with a very specific proposal. And he comes up with a substitute. Okay, don't give me that. Give me this instead. So he's not saying we're going to go on a hunger strike. He's like, we do want to eat. This is what we want to eat. So help us do this. And so he also learned something really important. We learned earlier that Nebuchadnezzar said, only pick the good-looking ones. And then when the chief of the eunuchs says, I can't do this because you won't look as good as everybody else, Daniel now knows that how he looks is really important to them. So he says, okay, fine, if that's what's important to you, then we don't want to cause you any problems. So if we look emaciated and gaunt, then fine, you don't have to do this. But let's test it and see. And it's a limited time test. It's 10 days. That's all we're asking for, 10 days. And if you think at the end of that we don't look good, fine. The other thing he does, or doesn't do here as he does this, is he doesn't try to box him in. He doesn't say, okay, at the end of 10 days, if we look good, you're going to keep doing this. He just says, okay, at the end of the 10 days, whatever you want to do, you make a decision then. I'm not going to tell you what to do. So it's a much wiser way of dealing with this problem and trying to come up with a solution to this problem. There might be something else going on here, which we'll talk about in just a second. So that's the proposal. Then the response. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. So the steward says, okay, we'll give it a try for 10 days and see what happens. So then the result of the test. At the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. So now we're told that when it's over, he decides, my decision is I'm going to keep doing this. We're going to let this happen. So why? Like, what is the incentive for him to do this? Why would he do it? And probably this is where it's not directly stated, but it's possible. It says the steward took away their food. It doesn't say he didn't give them this food anymore. It says he took it away. He carried it away. So it could be that what the steward gets out of this is I get to keep the good food and I give them vegetables. So I'm getting something out of this. So he's taking away the good food and giving them vegetables. So that might be part of his incentive as to why he decides he's going to do this. But he does. And then we're told, as for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So they learn, they get the skills that they're supposed to get in wisdom and literature, in visions and dreams, which is going to take up a large part of the book from this point forward. It's all about Daniel and visions and dreams and how he interprets them. It's very important that he know how to do this, and so God is going to help him do this, has given him the ability to do this. And so at the end of the time, that is at the end of the 3-year period where they're in college in Babylon, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and among all those, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore, they stood before the king. So They pass the test. They are the best of the best. They are the valedictorians of the class. And it says at the end, they stood before the king. The king had a plan. I want to kidnap these people. I'm going to bring them here. They got to have certain qualities. I'm going to educate them. I'm going to feed them, and because I want them to stand before me one day. And here we're told he gets what he wants. His plan works. He is a genius, except we go back to verse 17. It says, again, God gave them wisdom. Nebuchadnezzar's plan didn't work. It wasn't because of what he did. It wasn't because of the education he gave them. It was because God gave them wisdom. It undercuts his narrative that, look at how great I am. Look at what I can do. I have done this. And Daniel says, no, actually, it's the Lord who did it, not you. Then we're told, and in every manner of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in all his kingdom. So they're not just good at it, they were just top of their class. They were like top of the wise men now. They understood things. They were able to do things that they weren't. They were very wise. So the evaluation of their performances, you guys are really, really good at this, and that's going to propel them into more service for the king. So he gets what he wants, but he only gets it because God allows him to get it. Then in verse 21, we're told, and Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. So this last verse tells us how long he was there. Now, it doesn't say he died then, so we don't know if that means that he was there serving that long or he was alive that long. But the first year of Cyrus is 67 years after he was taken captive. So he's been there, he's going to be there a long time. And what's important about this, mentioning Cyrus, Cyrus is not a Babylonian. Cyrus is the king of Persia. The Persians are going to destroy the Babylonian kingdom. And the Persians are going to come and Cyrus is going to let the people of Israel go back home. So not only is Daniel going to outlast Nebuchadnezzar, he's going to outlast all of Nebuchadnezzar's successors. He's going to outlive Babylon. Babylon will die before he dies. The Lord is with him for a long time, empowering him to do these things. So he's going to live on. So essentially the rest of the book takes place between verses 20 and 21, because 21 just skips ahead to the end. Everything else happens in between there. And so why was this written? What is this about? Well, I mean, one of the things it does, it introduces us to the people who are going to be the primary people in the story from now on, Daniel and his friends, Nebuchadnezzar, and the guys who come after him, but mainly the Lord. And throughout the book, the Lord just operates in the background. He's not like directly involved in a lot of things, but he's the one doing everything in the background. And we get to see that here. And it introduces what the book's going to be about, like the king versus the Lord, fear versus loyalty, and also that the Lord is in control. No matter where his people are, no matter who the human rulers are, he is the one in charge and always will be. So his people then have to remain faithful in that foreign land. And so I think the application to us then, what are we supposed to do with this? One, we need to remember that the Lord is in control. He's sovereign ruler, no matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter who the rulers are of the country or how ungodly they are, how awful they are. He is in control. So Daniel never explains, like, why did he get taken captive? Why did Judah get destroyed? You have to look at other places in the Old Testament to see that. But it does tell us when it happens, here's how you need to live. This is what you should do as an exile. And so we learn from that. One of the things we learn is that, again, going back to these things, Nebuchadnezzar had a plan. Nebuchadnezzar gets what he wants, but God gave Jehoiakim to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had a plan to train the courtiers to stand before the king. They do it, they pass the test, they stand before the king, but it's because God gives them wisdom. He's in control of all this. So how do we live faithfully in exile? That's, I think, what is most important here. How do we remain loyal to the Lord in that? Part of it is to expect propaganda and pressure to assimilate. That's what they went through. Day by day, the pressure to, come on, be like us. We want to do everything we can do to make you like us. Don't be different. Don't be distinctive. Be just like the rest of us. Your beliefs, the way you do things, are weird. Don't you want to fit in with us? Fitting in with us would make things so much easier for you. That's the kind of pressure that they put on us. Offering compromises, offering rewards. Well, if you'll do this, we'll give you that. And if you don't do that, we might take this from you. We got incentives, we got fines, we've got punishments. But mainly, it's the daily kind of slow drip of, come on, be like us, be like us. Here's how you should do this. Here's why you're wrong about this. Every day trying to put pressure slowly can wear you down over time. So we have to intentionally counter it with wisdom. We have to know that it's happening and then try to undermine that kind of dominant narrative. We don't want to be Babylonized. We don't want to be made into good citizens of the world. Daniel and his friends made deliberate choices that they are not going to let that happen. They're going to take a stand. And we have to do the same thing. We have to deliberately purpose in our hearts that we're not going to do that. And how do we do that then? Well, one of the things we do, which I think we get from Daniel, is what Nebuchadnezzar did. He took the children. Like, we need their children to think this way. Because we can get the children, the adults, okay, we can't do anything about them. They're set in their ways. But if we can get the children and Babylonize them, that will change everything. So we have to be careful to teach our children well and protect them from those influences that want to acculturate them to the dominant culture of the world. And one of the ways we do that is just stay in touch with community, being a community, being together to help each other. If you're off by yourself, not in community, it's easy to get picked off by these people. There's no one to support you. And you're going to feel so much more pressure to be like everybody else if you're on your own. And so being there, being together with each other, maintaining worship together, that's how we together purpose in our hearts, fix our hearts on not becoming like the culture around us, to be able to stand, to not be disloyal to the Lord in order to get along with the society that we are a part of. All right, let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you have revealed yourself to us, that you've revealed yourself to us through stories like this, telling us what has happened in the past, how your people have reacted in the past, the pressures that they have faced in the past, which are so similar to pressures that we face today. And I pray that you'll help us to have that kind of integrity of heart that Daniel had, to do the right thing, to intentionally not abandon you, not to become like the world around us, because it is so easy to do, and they want us to do it. And I just pray that you'll help us to have that integrity to maintain our loyalty to you above all else. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.